Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Happy Monday.
I haven't been on this stage for quite some time, and I thought I'd use the privilege of the podium to update you on one of Rotary's investments. In 2002, I received an unexpected call from Felker Ward, who was then president of this club, asking me to host the International Rotary Student. I wasn't thrilled. I had just sent our youngest child off to college, and I really did not want another parental responsibility. But in the spirit of Rotary, and after checking with my husband Ross, I said yes. Chukwudi Chiagana landed in Atlanta, having come from Anambra State, Nigeria, not far from Lagos, arriving 2 weeks late due to lingering complications from 9/11. Having completed his very first flight, we headed straight to Morehouse College. To be perfectly honest, I felt a bit timid, not knowing how a white mom would be received. And for the record, no one even batted an eye. Chooks, as we called him, captured our hearts with his exuberance, his humor, his gratitude, and his intelligence. And Morehouse soon saw his fabulous potential and added 3 more years of scholarship to the 1 year he'd gotten from Rotary. Chooks worked hard, did well, and graduated right on time. And then he applied for and received a full scholarship to Vanderbilt School of Medicine, and is now a practicing anesthesiologist and chronic pain manager, in Missouri. His original goal was to return to Nigeria to build a hospital, but unsafe conditions and the insistence of his family have dictated otherwise. And though he's not been back since leaving, he's personally experienced the agony there, having recently lost his only brother to abduction and murder. On the lighter side, he's embraced his adopted home with characteristic curiosity and enthusiasm, and has only Vermont to go before reaching his goal to visit every one of the United States. In the interim, he's kept in constant touch, and since he's been working, he's added a beautiful bouquet up to his regular Mother's Day call. Chooks is getting married this weekend, and Ross and I are happily going to celebrate with him. He arrived at Atlanta as a college freshman with only $460 and the contents of 2 suitcases. In his words, "Today, I've been blessed with an education, a car, a house, and now, most importantly, a wife. And I'm grateful to Rotary for taking a chance on me." I called Felker Ward last week to thank him again for the gift of knowing Chooks. I know his choice to give Chooks a chance is one of the many Rotary-driven initiatives that Felker undertook, and I'm grateful to Felker and to Rotary for the privilege and the joy of being part of this one. May we bow our heads in prayer. Lord, thank you for the unexpected. Grant us the curiosity and the wisdom to open our hearts and minds to it. Help us embrace the unfamiliar and grow through it. Thank you for life in a place that is open and plentiful. Give us compassion for those suffering in ways we cannot comprehend, and lead us to help them, especially those experiencing the unfathomable strife of war and hunger around the world. Guide us to make a difference. And as the country focuses on Georgia's primaries, guide us also in this place of plenty to choose our leadership wisely, and to recognize that each of us is a leader who can work to bring calm and reconciliation to those around us. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. Thank you also for the Fellowship of Rotary for our meal, and for the people that prepared it. Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would love to find another piano player in this crowd, but we're going to do this a cappella. God Bless America is, as my friend Bill Britt, my pastor Bill Britt, has said many times in services, is a prayer, and it's a prayer for America. So please join me. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Thank you. Enjoy your lunch. Good afternoon. Welcome again to all of you. Welcome again. I hope your week is off to a fantastic start. We are so honored to have Dr. Raphael Bostic here to share his economic outlook with us at a most timely moment in our economy. We will get to that featured program shortly, but first we have a series of club announcements, a new member introduction, and the last in our series of club awards to give. We begin with a warm welcome to all of our guests. We have literally 4 pages of guests today, so I'm not going to read all the names, but I will mention just a few who have come especially far to be with us. I wanted to recognize Yashwant Gonkle, who is visiting here from India as a guest of Ken Byers, visiting Rotarian. Welcome to you. And also Lutz Gorgens visiting from Amran, Germany. Where is Lutz? Welcome to you. Also, our Rotary District Assistant Governor, Jim Coyle, and the new incoming District Assistant Governor, Lisa Carlisle, are here. Where are you? Welcome, both of you. And in the interest of time, if I could ask any of the others of you visiting as a guest of a Rotarian, please all stand together now so we can welcome you. Thank you so much. So, true confessions, I love the Geico commercials, and at the risk of sounding like one of the parents in the Geico commercial who are already talking about leaving the event before it has started, I wanted to give you a quick cue on how to quickly exit the parking deck. We have, just a reminder for our members and our guests today, we have 2 exit lanes at the Auburn Street exit. Just a reminder, for some reason, that second exit doesn't seem to get used. And then the lower level, level 1, has another exit here, works just as well. It's never crowded. All of these places lead to the same surrounding streets. So if you want to find the fastest way out, you have 3 options. If you were with us last week, you will remember our honoring those lost recently in the racist massacre in Buffalo. This past week also marked the first of the funerals of the 10 members of that community who were killed that day, including the funeral for 67-year-old Deacon Hayward Patterson. Deacon Patterson was beloved throughout the community for his daily routine. He would provide rides from the Tops grocery store for those neighbors who otherwise could not afford a car. He would load up his Ford Fusion with shopping bags, driving customers home, and then repeat the trip for the next neighbor in need. He was gunned down that day while doing yet another of his routine tasks as he helped someone load groceries into their car. Deacon Patterson was our kindred spirit in Buffalo. He was killed while fulfilling his own mission of service to the community, which is just the same as our own Rotary mission of service. As we continue to think about all of our kindred spirits everywhere, whether it's in Buffalo or those 46 Rotary clubs in Ukraine that we've talked about and so many other places, let us redouble our efforts to find a way forward for all of our brothers and sisters. One of those building blocks of the way forward has been the diverse friendships that we build right here at home, many of which have been sparked by our own Atlanta Friendship Initiative. For those of you who may be newer to the club, the Atlanta Friendship Initiative was founded 6 years ago by the late Bill Nordmark Sr. and John Grant. They had a goal of building meaningful relationships to eliminate racism. And I believe we have a slide, Joel, that shows some of that. Today, that initiative includes 250 pairs, including, I know, so many of you who are right here in this room. Those friendships are more important than ever. On a fun note, Atlanta Friendship Initiative has also graciously invited any and all Rotary members to attend the dress rehearsal for Trading Places, the musical, which will be held tomorrow night, Tuesday the 24th, at the Alliance Theater. Admission or attendance is free, and you can email Gina for the sign-up link or go to the Atlanta Friendship Initiative.org website that you see there on the screen. There is plenty of room for more friendships in the Friendship Initiative, so I encourage any and all of you who are not already part of this important effort to please register at that website and sign up to be part of this wonderful effort. Earlier this year, we announced our board's decision to adopt early childhood education as a strategic initiative for this club. And I'm pleased to welcome to the stage Gretchen Corbin, who will talk about our annual service day, which will be focused on this theme. Welcome, Gretchen.
Thank you, President Catherine. Good afternoon, everyone. Lutz, welcome home to Atlanta. It's so good to see you. So good to see you. Well, President Kelly, as you have mentioned and other speakers have mentioned today, as Rotarians, we have the opportunity and the honor to serve others. And you never, ever know how you might touch someone, right? You never know how you will impact someone. I love our service days. I will tell you it's been some of my most exciting and my most memorable times with my fellow Rotarians when I have been, when we've been putting boxes of food together at the food bank. When we have been volunteering with one another so that we stand beside one another and we forge these bonds of friendship while we are giving. And so I'm really excited on behalf of the Community Service organization or your Community Service Committee to remind you of this year's Service Day. As you know, Monday, June 6th, we will not be here at Loudermilk. There will not be a formal program, but instead we will be fanning out around Atlanta to impact our youngest learners. And so we are excited that all of our projects are going to be around early education, and we will have 3 opportunities for you. You should have received an email on Friday, but don't worry if you didn't see it or you didn't respond, because after this meeting today, you will receive another with a link that will give you the opportunity to sign up for one of these 3 opportunities. Your 3 opportunities are, number 1, helping with the landscaping and beautification project at Sheltering Arms locations throughout Georgia. This will be from 10 to 12. Not only are we doing 3 projects, but we're doing them at 3 times during the day so that we can make sure that we can hit one of your calendars. We will also, number 2, assemble and paint 10 little free libraries at our offices, at the Georgia Lottery offices, between the hours of 12 to 1. And then number 3, we will read and we will do craft projects in pre-K classrooms in partnership with the YMCA, GEARS, the Georgia Early Education Alliance for Ready Students, and the Mayor's Summer Reading Program. And we will be doing this, we will be reading to students between 1 and 2 at multiple YMCA facilities throughout Atlanta. So you can see we have various opportunities that we hope will fit your interest and your schedule. And I wanted to give you a quick heads up that we will not be having lunch at any of these locations. That's an important piece. I kept saying, we've got to let everyone know, and so it fell on me. And so, but I would just encourage you to have lunch before or after, and maybe it's a really cool opportunity to grab a Rotarian and go have lunch together. We look forward to seeing you on June 6th providing service. We know that this will provide our service as we look to do so in Rotary, and it will meet our motto, service above self. I want to say a big thank you on behalf of the Service Committee to President Kelly and also to Stephanie Blank for making sure that we had this program really targeted toward our youngest learners and that we had an opportunity for all of our Rotarians. I look forward to serving beside you on June 6th. And President Kelly, thank you for this incredible opportunity for our club.
Thank you so much, Gretchen. You are awesome. Really appreciate your leadership of this wonderful day ahead. I am now pleased to introduce Kevin Greiner, who will introduce new member Ivan Shamus. There's Kevin.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So on behalf of my co-sponsors, Pat Upshaw Monteith and Rodney Bullard, I'm pleased to introduce my good friend, Ivan Shamus, to you today. Ivan is president and general manager of Univision, which is the leading provider of television programming for Hispanic and Latinx audiences. He recently returned to Univision after having worked at Telemundo for 8 years as general manager there. So at Univision, Ivan oversees all station activities. That includes sales, it includes programming, broadcast news, marketing, and community affairs. So I've had the pleasure of working with Ivan on a number of initiatives over the years. We got to know each other when we were both serving on the board of the United Way, Milton. You remember that. We were both there together. And knowing the type of board member that he is, I actually recruited him to come over to the YMCA of Metro Atlanta, where we're serving today together. He also serves on the board of the Atlanta Community Food Bank, yet another institution represented in our club. And he's also on the Cristo Rey Board of Trustees and the Emory Board of Visitors. So I think what you'll learn with Ivan is he's one of the most positive people that you'll see out there. His enthusiasm for me is always infectious. When he decides to get involved with something, he's all in, and I know that's going to be the case for Rotary here. He's generous, curious, authentic, and very optimistic. He's just one of those folks who sees the good in people and really demonstrates that people matter in his actions and his words. Every day, he's a true servant leader and aligns so well with the values of our club. He has a true passion for engaging with the Latinx community and ensuring that corporations and institutions are really connected with this fast-growing and very aspirational demographic here in Atlanta and elsewhere. He's chaired the board of the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Veronica, welcome as a guest today, and he continues to serve on that board. Ivan's been widely recognized as well for his business acumen and his commitment to public service and community well-being. Over the last 2 years, he's been on Atlanta Magazine's list of 500 most powerful leaders and Georgia 10's list of the 100 most influential people. He's a graduate of Georgia State with a BA in journalism. He's of Venezuelan descent, but is a lifelong Atlantan, and he lives in Brookhaven with his wife and 3 children. Please join me in welcoming and getting to know Ivan Shamus.
Ivan, welcome to Rotary. We are so excited to have you as a new member of the world's greatest Rotary Club. We look forward to recruiting that infectious, positive energy and all the wonderful work that this club has to offer. So thank you again. And
Thank you.
welcome.
Honored to be part of this group. Thank you very
All right,
much.
welcome. I'm going to ask Kevin to stay on stage for a minute. He's performing a bit of double duty today. Kevin is now going to present the last in our series of awards, which is the Marion Collier Ross Leadership Award.
All right, I am back. You don't get rid of me that easily today, folks. Sorry about that. But no, one of the many things that I love about our Rotary Club is that we really take the time to celebrate the contributions of our members and really let them know that we appreciate them. And so I have the pleasure today to present the Marion Collier Ross Award. And this is an award that we present to the club member who has demonstrated, quote, the highest moral and ethical leadership in recent memory. And this award today is being presented to Bill Hennigan. So we had, I'm going to brag on you a little bit here, Bill, and then we'll give you your award. Does that work out for you? All right, awesome. Well, we had several club members serving as the selection committee for this particular award, and I'd like to read several of the testimonials from our committee, the things that people said about Bill as we determined, whom should receive this prestigious award this year. So first, with Cannon Carr, he said, quote, during the pandemic in my essentially virtual presidency, Bill was absolutely instrumental, not only in programs, but also in strategizing about how to turn on the lights, get the club up and running, onboard a new executive director, and so many other things. He enabled me to succeed in the toughest of times, very deserving. Then we had Adrian Cronje. Adrian said, in my opinion, Bill has been a real unsung hero of our club, a genuine servant leader, always looking to make others successful while putting the club above himself. He has been instrumental in institutionalizing the policies and procedures that we are now deploying as a membership committee. He has weighed in thoughtfully on several issues as a board member. Few members are as proud of our history and heritage than Bill. And then President Catherine Kelly, she said, as I look at this year, Bill has shown extraordinary leadership above and beyond for this club, having led programs week after week for 2 years, together with his work on 3 membership committees. He is the person I turn to in considering the right way to honor another club member and determining the right thing to do for our club. He never lets a ball drop on programs, and he is deeply committed to doing the best for Rotary. And then for myself, Bill is someone that I look forward to seeing every week at Rotary. I make a point of introducing him to every prospect that I bring into the club and to new members because I know that Bill will make them feel welcome. And as I worked with President Catherine to develop our reopening strategy, Bill was one of the people who jumped right in, helped us to determine a way back that would be well received by our membership and our speakers. He is a true servant leader who puts service above self every day. So please join me in congratulating our friend Bill Hennigan, the winner of the 2022 Marion Collier Ross Leadership Award.
Completely surprised. Thank you very much to all those that I worked with. And these people are really clever because I invited my wife to Rotary this morning, and I thought it was my idea. So thank you. We have a great club. We have an extraordinary member base. Thank you for all of those who returned my phone call as program manager. And I thank you all. And for those of you who didn't, I'll talk to you later. And I'll introduce you to David Rubinger and to David Lewis, who will follow up. Thank you.
I do not know how I could have gotten through this year without Bill Hennigan. And when I said he never lets a ball drop, it is absolutely 100% amazing perfection of how he just covers every detail. And thank goodness David Rubinger came along to help support him this year, but to do this for 2 years is just incredible. I have asked these guys to stay up here because we've heard several weeks of awards, but I would like to take an opportunity today to shine a bright light of thanks on all of our officers this year. You will hear from me in the weeks ahead as we share our appreciation for our incredible staff and Gina, but today I wanted to recognize our officers, so if any of you who are officers could please come up here, yes, up onto the stage. This group has toggled back and forth, literally between virtual and live meetings all year. They have organized events. They have worked tirelessly to recruit new members. They have creatively engaged our existing and earlier members. I could not ask for a more committed and hardworking group. I will go down the line. David Rubinger, co-chair of programs, Adrian Cronje, secretary, Gretchen Corbin, Vice President of Community Service, Jim Reed, Vice President of International Service, Billy Levine, Vice President of Club Service, Randall Kirsch, Vice President of Membership, excuse me, Kevin Greiner, Sergeant at Arms, let's see, you know Bill, of course, Kathy Waller, our treasurer, also doing double duty for 2 years, and then Stephanie Blank, of course, as our president-elect. Please join me in a huge round of applause. This is an amazing team, and this club is so fortunate to have them. Thank you all. I'm now honored to introduce fellow Rotarian Shan Cooper, who will introduce our featured speaker today. I remember a great conversation that Canon Carr and I had with Shan last fall. At the time, Shan was executive director of the Atlanta Committee for Progress, and Canon and I were trying to pick her brain a little bit about the small topic of Atlanta's strategic needs. I will never forget that conversation because she had this amazing perspective at the intersection of data and research, strategy, and this wonderful perspective on the human needs of Atlanta's people. I know she has shown that same great balance over and over again in multiple leadership roles for this city, and she is the perfect person to introduce Dr. Bostic today for a great strategic discussion. Welcome, Shan.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. You guys got to get lively. Got a great speaker today. First of all, let me say it's an honor to be here today, and it's a real honor for me to be on stage today with my dear friend, Dr. Raphael Bostic. And I'm not going to read his bio to you, but I'm going to talk to you about the other side that many of you may not know about Raphael, and that is his heart and his giving back to this city. I had the honor of serving with Raphael as I led the Atlanta Committee for Progress. And he was my go-to person. I got to tell you, yes, I was out there with these wonderful CEOs, and everybody's great on ACP, let me tell you. But there was something about Raphael when things were at their most chaotic, their most disruptive. He was the voice of reason in the room, and he was always calm, like the calm right before the real storms would come. And I just so appreciated that. He was also one that if you gave him an ear, you knew the conversation stayed right there. And that's we all need someone in our lives just like that. So he's been that for me the last several years. In addition to that, Raphael joined me in working on the Beloved benefit. So he's a giver. He has served as the head of the board for United Way, worked with Katie, is serving as her board chair for the Metro Atlanta Chamber. So he's more than just a title that we get to talk about, right? He really walks the talk, and as busy as he is, he's never been too busy to step up and just get the work done. And so he knows I have secrets and I have stories. And so he said to me, now keep this short, Shan. And I said, well, I'm just going to say you were born, you live, and you're here. And he said, that's perfect. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Raphael Bostic. I think I'm on now. Are you on?
I think so, yes.
Wonderful. I'm getting ready to channel my inner Oprah. I love it. I love it. I love this moment. I love this microphone. But more importantly, I love being here with you, Raphael. There's so much we want to talk about. All these people showed up for you today. You know that, right? Because
I heard something about this.
yeah, we want to hear what you have to say. We got a
Yeah.
lot to talk. We got a war going on. We've got inflation. We've got interest rates. We've got all this stuff, labor shortages. We've got supply chain issues. So a lot that we need you to talk with us about today. So I'm going to have a few questions here that I want to ask. Then I'm going to open the floor to the audience. So audience, I'm going to try to be brief because you all know I can be long-winded. I'm a pastor's kid. I love this microphone. So let's just jump right in here. Jump right in here, Raphael. So to start, can you give us a quick business or layperson explanation of the Federal Open Market Committee's latest policy actions and the path ahead? So what do we have to look forward to?
So first of all, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you all. I want to thank you for dealing with the change in schedule and having us move from January to May. You all still came out anyway, so that's good.
On a rainy day.
I also want to say congratulations to Bill. This well-deserved award. You've done so much for this club. In thinking about the economy and sort of from a layperson, I can make this quick. Inflation is high. Inflation is too high. And we need to do things to bring it down. And so what you've seen from our committee over the last several months is the beginning of that process. You know, we started this year still in an emergency position, right? The pandemic brought a lot of pain and uncertainty into the economy. We moved quickly to make sure that monetary and financial markets were not going to be a source of additional disruption and pain. We didn't know how long that was going to last, and so we wanted to make sure that when we started pulling back, we had an opportunity for the economy to credibly stand on its own feet. I think it's pretty clear that the economy can, and when that became the case, we started moving with our interest rates. So we've got two policies. The interest rate is our main policy trigger. We were basically at zero. We've now moved about to 1%, and I think we've got a little more to go over the next several months. And again, with the goal being inflation has got to come down. Right now it's in the 5 or 6% range. Our target is 2% in the inflation space, though that's not close. Right, so we've got to get it back down to that. We're going to do whatever we can in that regard. We're also going to start reducing the size of our balance sheet. That was another area where there was a lot of concern about the ability of our financial markets to function. I think it's pretty clear they can function as well, and so we need to pull back from that and make sure that that we are as engaged as the economy needs, and not. And I think it leads a lot less now than it did at the beginning of the pandemic.
Wonderful. Well, you walked right into my second question, which was around what are the things that you're weighing, right? As you look, 3 months out, maybe even 6 to 12 months out, are there other things that you're thinking about?
So, one of the things that we try to do at our building, or in our building, is really focus on the underlying fundamentals that are driving the dynamics. So when you think about price is the intersection of supply and demand. Those two things together will determine what price is and what the price level will ultimately be. So we've got to really step back and say, well, what are the drivers of the supply side and what are the drivers on the demand side? And in particular, what we know now is that when prices are accelerating, that means you've got more demand than you have supply. And there are lots of different reasons why that can happen. One of the things that's very interesting in today's economy is that the dynamic that's driven that is really different than what you historically see. Usually you historically see the markets being very tight, labor markets being tight, and businesses, because they have to push to try to always get more profits, start taking more risks. And they start getting much more further out there into the extreme. And that extreme, then when it comes back on itself, leads the economy to contract or move backwards. That's actually not the dynamic we have today. We don't have a dynamic where businesses are going way out of their way to try to take risks to increase those margins. They're able to get these high margins because aggregate demand is just so much greater than the supply that's being able to be produced. And they're able, so first of all, we have this auction situation. Whenever demand is more than supply, you're basically an auction. And when you have an auction, the good goes to the highest bidder. And so businesses are always trying to figure out what's the highest price I can set. At the very beginning of the pandemic, they didn't think they could move the prices at all. And we do a lot of surveys at our bank, and hopefully you guys are all subscribed to us, so you're getting all those feedbacks as they come out. But we were not seeing businesses eager to pass through. But as their input costs continued to rise, they felt increasingly they didn't have any choice but to do that. And they found that the consumers were willing to pay those prices, right? And so that is one issue. So what drives that imbalance? We know this, you've all heard of the supply chain challenges. We just had several weeks of our logistics folks talking about a lot of the challenges around supply. And because of those challenges, businesses have not been able to just meet the demand. Every business person I've talked to has basically said, it hurts my heart. I'm making record profits, but I could be making more. Right? And they're focused on the frustration of not being able to meet that demand, and that's a challenge. More recently, you've heard about challenges in terms of labor markets and businesses having difficulty finding workers. That spiked. We're hearing less of that now. We're hearing much more emphasis on the supply chain issues, but that labor supply issue is one that is still out there. And then on the demand side, where is this demand coming from? And I actually think there are a couple of pieces to think about here. The biggest piece to my mind is the fact that for 2 years, all of us sat at home. We didn't go to restaurants. We didn't go on trips. We didn't go to plays or theater or any of those sorts of things. And it turns out it costs money to do those things. And that's money that people were not spending. And so when I talk to bankers, what they tell me is that bank balances across the board are far higher than they were pre-pandemic. So people have a lot of cash. And so you have that reality coupled with the fact that we all sat at home, we didn't want to do that anymore. That means everyone's going out and they're using that cash, right? And there's a lot of demand that is about people spending the money. Really, I think about it as a catch-up, right? We didn't go to plays for 2 years. I want to get back to that. But you can't really catch those things up. It's going to take a long time for that money to flow out of the economy. And then the other piece is policy. So we know that there's fiscal stimulus, we know there's monetary policy stimulus. All of these things were designed to really minimize the amount of damage that the pandemic caused. The phrase I use is create a bridge from before the pandemic to after the pandemic and have families and households and businesses as close to where they were before, after. And it turned out those policies worked, and they worked extremely well. So we don't see the disruption, we don't see the level of precariousness we would have ordinarily seen in the context of a deep recession and disruption and pain. So that leads to aggregate demand. So now the task and the challenge is to narrow those things, to pull demand down from its high levels if possible, and to see if there's evidence that the supply chain is breaking up, the supply chain challenges are breaking up, and we're starting to get resolution there, and that labor markets are starting to resolve themselves such that businesses are not fighting, 5 businesses are not fighting for every employee. Over the last 9-10 months, millions of jobs have been posted by businesses. They're only filling about 60% a month, right? Which means that there is a lot of basically auction for workers in the same way that you have auction for goods. And that tension creates a lot of difficulty. So we'll be looking for those sorts of things and trying to figure out where the economy is going and also how effective our policies have been.
Wonderful. Thanks, Raphael. So the next question, let's shift to the war, Russia and Ukraine. So we've seen, to your point about the price increases around certain food and commodities, even in the energy space. So do you foresee, two-part question, do you foresee that as the war continues, those effects will lessen, number one? And number two, how much of a drag on the economy do you foresee the war being or becoming? So your perspective on that.
Yeah, so those were two big questions.
I know. Let's take the first one.
Okay. I'm used to people ask me five or 6 questions.
Wonderful.
Yeah, most people,
I'm old. I couldn't remember.
when they get the mic, they figure this is my shot. I got to get all my questions out.
Yeah, all of my questions,
yeah,
right?
So for the war, first of all, dealing with the pandemic economy on its own is hard. Right? There's a lot that we've never seen before. There's a lot we've never really had to encounter before. And so just trying to keep tabs and track of all of that requires an amazing amount of effort. And my team has been great in getting us information early so we understand the twists and turns of the economy. I was going to give a speech. No, I actually gave the speech, I guess. And we have been working on this speech for maybe 4 months. And the week before we gave the speech, basically, the war started. And so we actually had to change the entire speech and start incorporating all these other sources of disruptions and challenges that were not on the table before. And I don't know about you, I was not an expert on the Ukraine economy and all the essential goods that come out of Ukraine. I knew that Russia was significant in terms of oil and gas, and that this was going to have implications for our energy sector. But it was not clear how all of this was going to feed through. We certainly didn't know, well, I didn't know at the time that the West would respond so quickly and so forcefully in terms of its economic sanctions and the like. So there was disruption, and we see that. You see that in gas prices. I mean, we all see that, right? And so the energy sector was a pretty immediate impact. But there are lots of other things. So we know about neon now. We know about fertilizers and ammonia and all these other factors that are key inputs to goods and products that we all need. What I've heard is that for many of those downstream products, the full effect of the war has not actually hit us yet. And that when I talk to the agriculture sector, they say, look, the price of fertilizer is up, but the goods that are going to come out with that fertilizer are not going to be in stores until December, January, February. And so there is still some upward price pressure that has to come. Now, those realities actually exist in a whole host of other markets as well, that same dynamic. These are input goods, and so they got to make the goods in order for that to then actually be realized into the marketplace. So that'll be something that we're going to watch. Another source of uncertainty when we think about the war is that all the initial predictions of this war were that it was going to be over in a week, right? That the Russian tanks were going to roll into Kyiv and be done with this, and we would have a new equilibrium. And that has just not turned out to be the case as well. So I think the implications of that for all of these things is very cloudy, because there are going to be parts of Ukraine that are going to be able to continue producing in ways that maybe we did not expect, but then there are going to be other places where disruption and tension is going to persist for a long time. And this is another area where we were just going to have to really pay a lot of attention. The Fed in general, we have a large team, many of them in Washington. It's a division of international finance. They are tracking these things, and so every time I go up there, I get briefings on what they're seeing and what they're learning. But Ukraine is a big additional source of uncertainty, which we're just going to have to monitor and adapt to.
Great, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about inflation. Couldn't let you leave the stage without using that word, right? So along with other federal policy makers, you've said you'd like to see the month-to-month run rate of inflation start to decline. We've seen some positive signs, but how much optimism can we draw from those? And is it enough hope that inflation has actually peaked, or is there more to come?
Yeah, so if I knew that question 100% clear, I'd be in a different place, right? Look, this is a very hard question. So at the beginning of this year, what I was telling people was I was less concerned about the annual rate of inflation, because I knew that there had been spikes, and so the baseline and the year ahead comparison was just not going to truly be meaningful. And what I was looking for much more was the month-to-month progression to see how things were going. And my hope was that month-to-month we would start to see pretty significant declines in our inflation rate. Now, that has actually not turned out to be the case. The first couple months stayed much higher than I wanted, and only now have we started to see slight declines in our month-to-month inflation. We're going to have to keep watching that. And one thing I will say is that how inflation evolves over this year will be an important driver of what the nature of our policy response is going to look like. Now, so our guys in the building, we have fights, I shouldn't say fights, we have discussions about this on a regular basis about how fast inflation can come down and what items might be triggers that should lead it to go up or to go down. And there's a lot of diversity of views and perspectives on those realities. But we all are of the same mind that it needs to come down. And so the question will be, as we see things evolve through the year, what does that mean? What is it telling us about the efficacy of our policy and the need to maybe do more or maybe do less? You know, one thing that has really surprised me over the last 2 months in particular has been how fast financial markets have responded to our policies. Even our forward guidance is leading to a lot of movement in financial markets. You see the 10-year Treasury, the 30-year mortgage rate. They have moved a lot more than we've actually moved in our policy space, and that's unusual. So that opens up some possibility that maybe other parts of the economy will respond faster than they have historically as well. Now, we don't know that for sure. We're going to have to keep our eyes open, but this really is a two-sided issue, right? It could go faster, it could go slower, and we've got to be ready to move in both directions.
Great, thank you. And Raphael, you talked a little bit earlier about the labor supply and businesses no longer having to kind of chase people down to come to work. But what will it take to bring the labor supply and demand into balance, and how does that link to bringing down inflation?
All right, so there's an easy answer and a hard answer to this question.
Okay, we got about 9 minutes, so just give me the easy answer. And
yeah,
then somebody's going to ask a question about it. You guys follow up that question, okay?
Yeah, so there are a couple things. So one, I think when you think about labor supply in particular, you have to come back to the pandemic. Right? The pandemic caused a lot of families to re-examine how they were connected to the labor force in ways that they had never really done before. Right? And so people became much more sensitive that childcare costs cost them a lot of money, commuting costs cost them a lot of money. They actually like being around their family. The work conditions that you have actually matter. So maybe it's not worth it to get like $9 an hour for being in a hot place where you don't have benefits or any of those sorts of things. And families across this country are all doing that recalculation as we speak. And some are going to decide that they're going to go in more or maybe in a different way. Others are going to decide, no, we're not going to do this. And you actually saw some of this. We had this surge of early retirements. A lot of that was calculation. People started doing the math, started thinking about quality of life. I don't really want to do that anymore. And now, though, you're seeing some of those retirees actually come back as labor markets conditions have changed and that calculus has changed. So we have a very, very dynamic labor supply situation, and much of it is a function of COVID and families changing their position relative to COVID. There are other things, though, right? So, good thing, some of my staff are not here. So I think about the changing competition for workers, right? So Amazon fulfillment centers, Target increasing their minimum wage, Walmart, that actually changes the whole competitive environment, particularly for people at the lower end of the wage scale. So the demand for them has changed a lot, and the supply of those workers has not changed nearly as much. So that is another type of contributing factor to challenges in labor market. So you have all that. And then on the other side, and I talked about aggregate demand, if aggregate demand can come down, then labor demand will come down. Right? That's a one-to-one. So we're going to try, our policies are mainly on the demand side. We're going to try to do our part. And my hope, I try to be optimistic. No, I don't. I am optimistic. I hope that optimism plays out, is that as people start to resolve their positions on the labor supply side, we'll start to get that equilibration really start to happen.
Wonderful. I'm going to shift gears to a topic that you and I both hold dear to our hearts, and that's affordable housing. Spent a lot of time, you and I, working and talking about what we should be doing here in Atlanta. And we've recently, though, been named a city that's now, that, it's just unaffordable, right, to live in. And I know you have an extensive background in the housing area, so 2 questions on this topic, and then I'll be ready to take questions from the audience, so you guys get ready. So talk to us a little bit about the importance of housing to society, and on a human level, and then talk to us about that in terms of the macroeconomy. So why is housing so important? Why should we care?
So I think first of all, there are a number of people here who probably answer this question far better than I am. I see you, Egbert, I know you have opinions on this. When I worked at HUD, we used the phrase housing as a platform. That if you have stable housing and secure housing, that becomes a platform that allows you to be able to do other things. If you don't have to worry about housing where you put your head, then you can invest in your human capital, you can do entrepreneurship, you can give your family an environment of security and stability so that they can then advance. If your housing is quality housing, you'll be healthier because you won't have issues around, say, asthma or those sorts of issues. And housing anchors you. Like where your house is determines your school district, it determines your access to the grocery store, all those sorts of things. So if people are housed well, they got a leg up in actually being able to get ahead and be well in terms of the quality of their life. So housing is incredibly important just on a consumption and use value basis. And then you think about housing as an investment property, an investment tool. And for many households in the United States, housing is the main source of wealth. Like almost half of the economy, half of our population does not have a position in the stock market. And so they're looking at things like housing as the way for them to build wealth and to be strong. So we need these markets to function, and we need them to work both on the ownership side and on the rental side. We have a tool, the Home Ownership Affordability Monitor. You guys should all watch that as well. We do this, we track affordability for every market in the United States, and Atlanta's going the wrong direction. There are a number of reasons for this, but we need to make sure we're providing supply, producing supply, and to the extent possible, seeing that supply come into the market at multiple price points and not just at the high end. Because if it's just at the high end, then you're just pushing the pain down. It's going to be harder, not easier, for those with fewer means.
Thank you, my friend. President,
Ready for some questions?
yes, we are.
Fantastic. All right, who wants to go first? I think we should go with RK.
Welcome back, RK.
We missed you, RK.
Thank you, thank you.
RK, you got a mic. Microphone.
Dr. Bostic, thank you for a wonderful presentation. It was worth waiting for. Let's give him another round of applause. Raphael, the question to you is, you have many territories under your umbrella, 6 or 7 states. Can you tell us one thing that the city of Atlanta or Georgia can adopt from other places that you go to that will improve our lot? Thank you.
So that's supposed to be an easy question, but that's a hard question. So here's what I would say. One of the things that I think we've seen in Georgia, which has been actually quite remarkable, is even through the pandemic, is growth has continued. And it has found ways to continue to invest in the people here, so the skills of the population are growing. The attention and focus on inclusion, that this is going to be an inclusive economy, and try to make sure that prosperity reaches as many people as possible, has been something that we've seen here. And I think nationally that's been heard. I think of Atlanta as probably the most powerful economy in my district, and it has been really a leader in terms of how you do get growth and how do you be ambitious and forward-looking. Now, I'll say there are a number of other cities that are trying to do the same thing. So I was just on a call earlier this morning about Miami and their investment in the cyber and the crypto and the fintech space, right? So there's a lot of competitiveness that's going on, but I think Atlanta is well positioned to do to continue its growth, and I think the policymakers are all focused on this. If you hear Governor Kemp, you hear candidate Stacey Abrams, they're all talking about how do you make this economy as strong as possible.
Okay, let's see, Jeff?
Raphael, I want to ask you about distribution, because I think the Atlanta Fed has taken the lead, and you in some of your speeches. On the one hand, if we fall into recession, fighting inflation, often the unemployment of black people go up often twice as fast as white people. And for black men, I think it's the worst usually, in a normal recession. On the other hand, if the economy has a lot of money and is pumping along, the stock market goes up a lot. That, as you say, that helps less than half the people. So on the one hand, you have inequality increasing, but on the other hand, if we fall in recession, it's often black men that hurt. So could you help us think how you think through that and lead the Fed in thinking through that?
Yeah, so thanks, Jeff, for that question. Look, this is a knife edge, right? If you go too far one way, you get more inequality. If you go too far the other way, you get more inequality. And so we're really trying to strike a fine-tuned approach to this. One thing that I say is that my goal is in this role never for us to have another recession. Like, that's what I'm trying to get to. And it's because the longer we can get growth, the longer we can get expansion, the people who have been least attached to the economy have the best shot of moving forward and getting ahead. So as we start to tackle this inflation, as we start to move our policies, we're going to be mindful as much as possible to try to strike that perfect note, right? You've heard people talk about soft landing. The idea of the soft landing is you get inflation under control, having no pain or damage in labor markets. That's incredibly difficult to do, but my mother told me very early, if you don't shoot high, you won't get high. So that's where we got to try to get to, and we're going to do all that we can to make sure that that while getting inflation down to our target range, we're not creating undue pain and damage that could be avoidable. Now, it may be the case the dynamic is such that we just wind up having to go super hard, right? But that's not my baseline case today, and that's not my hope for where we will wind up having to get to.
Okay, let's see. Back in the back there, Zach?
Mr. Bostic, my question is, how high does inflation have to get to significantly impact Social Security? And will Social Security be able to handle the increase in inflation that we're seeing now?
Well, I thought you were going to a totally different place than that. So there are a lot of dimensions on this. So one, Social Security is a contract between the federal government and the American people, right? And if they're going to break that contract or change it, there's going to be a lot of discussion around that. I actually think inflation is not going to be a driving force in that. I think it'll be a bunch of other things that will matter in terms of how that plays out. Now, inflation will have implications for how many people are in the workforce versus are not, and the choices that people make for what they consume, how much they save, all that kind of stuff, and what Social Security provides them in terms of an adequate level of support, right? And those things are real in terms of the demands on Social Security. What I would say is, my goal and our collective goal is to try to make sure inflation leaves the list of things that people worry about. If we can get it back down to our target as quickly as possible, then it will have no implication or impact on people's expectations for what prices are going to be a month from now. And in that context, then it will have no impact on what they feel they need in terms of income at any particular level or point in time. And ultimately, that's where we want to get to. We want the basic functioning of the economy to just be invisible to people, so that they don't feel like they have to make special decisions or choices on a month-to-month or week-to-week basis because they don't know where the price is going to be, or they're afraid that milk is going to be too high, or all those sorts of things. So my hope is that we're going to do what we need to do. No, I'm going to say this differently. We're going to do what we need to do, and hopefully inflation will come to heel relatively fast, so that this does not become something that weighs on people for too long.
Okay, I think there's a question down here in the front.
Yeah, we should just give him. You just had.
Raphael, thank you so much. So a few of us had a conversation with Dennis Lockhart a few weeks ago, and I also agree that we're not in a stagflation type of environment, but for the middle America, not the lowest bracket, but the 40-somethings, they have some kids, they have a good paying job. what are some leading indicators that may indicate that they're under financial stress or having problems? I'm in the lending space, and we watch a lot of the credit quality very, very closely.
Well, if you're in the lending space, you know the answer to that question, right? Right? So look, clearly, stress shows up in a number of different ways. One, do you spend out of savings? Two, do you buy different goods? So, we have a number of contacts that sell goods from like basic consumption all the way up to luxury. And they can tell when there are shifts and we're selling less on the luxury side and more on just the basic side. There are some stores where they don't see people from certain zip codes unless you're getting to a stressful situation. They actually even switch the stores they go to. So trying to pay attention to those sorts of things. Delinquency rates on credit, and they're starting to rise as we speak, but still by historic levels quite low. Use of credit cards, I think MasterCard just reported a couple days ago that credit card usage is now up back to basically pre-pandemic levels. These are all signs that consumption is starting to get to people's limits on what their basic income can handle. So those are all things that we look at. One of the challenges we have in this environment, though, is that through the pandemic, all of those measures were at historically good levels. Like historically, bank balances, delinquency rates incredibly low, like all those sorts of things. And so pulling back a little off of those says that there's some stress, but it's like a stress that's just getting us back to where we were before, and not a stress that suggests that we're on the cusp of something that's going to be incredibly painful or damaging. Now, any movement is stuff you gotta look at, right? And the pace of change is something that we also have to pay attention to. But right now, it's almost as if the movements that we're seeing are movements toward normalization. And we don't like the word normalization because it begs the question what normal is. But if you think about pre-pandemic levels as normal, we are moving back to that kind of level, which should suggest sort of that narrowing of the supply-demand imbalance. But we'll just have to see what it looks like.
See a question from this side of the room. Okay, Peter?
It's coming.
Yes, when you consider inflation, how much attention do you give to the role of tariffs in affecting inflation?
So that's a good question. This perhaps could get us in a little bit of a technical space, right?
Don't do it. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead. Answer the question. No.
I'll fight my impulse.
My job was to keep you out of trouble today, be careful.
That's good. So inflation is a rate of change of prices over time, right? So it's how much did the price increase as we've moved over time. A tariff on some level is just a one-time shift in the level, at which point then you start tracking the inflation. Right, so if a tariff were going to be continually ratcheted up, then it would be contributing to inflation because the change in the rate of pricing would be getting higher and higher and higher. Now, it could be the case, though, that a tariff can change the mix of goods that are purchased and put pressure on different parts of a family's goods basket, such that it could lead to pricing pressure showing up in some places. I've not actually looked at that to know. But the tariff is kind of a different level, a different issue. I will say in the context of families that having budget constraints, reducing a tariff does reduce the level. So the tension and the stress on that budget constraint is lower, but it won't be lower because it's bringing inflation down. It's lower because it's taking that step level change in a price, which is really a different thing.
I think we have one last question. Martha, did you have your hand? No? Oh, you got it? Okay, last question. Who's out there? Let's see. Oh, there you go, Bruce.
Dr. Bostic, back to the war a little bit, more specifically the petroleum, natural gas, those kind of supply and demand and price increases and the impact over the next 6, 12, 18, 20 months.
Yeah, I didn't. I'll just talk about it. So there are at least two interesting aspects on this that I think we need to consider. So one is how much capacity do we have to increase above what we're producing right now? Right? We know that through geopolitics there's been this separation such that providers of goods that are in certain parts of the world or in certain countries are not going to be accessible for us. Right? And so the question is, to what extent can we backfill that? And the question and the answer is, well, it depends on how much capacity we have to actually produce that amount. When I talk to energy folks in our district, what they tell me is that the amount of excess capacity is relatively small. You think about natural gas. For us to get natural gas to Europe, you have to have basically these plants that can cool the gas down, bring it into liquid form so that you can load it onto a ship, and then that ship can transport. We are at full capacity of those today, right? And so we don't have the ability to increase really the amount of natural gas that we can move over to Europe to backfill those sorts of things. So we very much have to think about sort of what kind of investments are possible and where is there excess capacity to try to mitigate all of these things. And then the second dimension is really what are our options in terms of changing the mix of energy sources that we use, and maybe potentially shifting to places where there is excess capacity. And from what I hear and when I talk to business leaders, the challenge with that is that those shifts are not easily done in a 2-month period or a 5-month period. Those require major investments such that you're going to wind up having some level of tension in these markets for more extended periods of time. On the backside, you wind up, if you do it well, in a more resilient space, but there is a transition, and that transition is going to be a period where you're potentially going to have disruption and a lot of volatility, and I think you're seeing a lot of that volatility in how markets are playing out today.
Raphael and Shan, hearing your perspective is absolutely one of the highlights of our year. Thank you so much. Just a final reminder, come join us, as Gretchen said, on June the 6th. There's no program next Monday for Memorial Day. Have a wonderful holiday week, and we look forward to seeing you for our club service day.